Welcome to episode 116 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast, recorded May 9th, 2021. My name is Ian. I live on Vancouver Island. I'm a student preparedness, target shooter, and my farm's designated slightly below average handyman.
I'm Alan. My camera's off for everyone's safety, apparently. I'm a safety trainer, first responder, security expert, and overall safety nerd.
I'm Scott. I'm the frazzled new dad and paramedic based all over Ontario. And yeah.
Overall swell guy.
Well, thanks.
And I'm Jeff. I'm based in Central Ontario. I'm a target shooter, soon-to-be ham radio operator, and general overall handyman. I'm Eric's designated drinking buddy whenever he wants to show up on the show.
Want to help support the show and keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air? Buy some swag. We have both the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt and the tactical Velcro patch at prepperpodcast.ca. All proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
And if you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and like us on Facebook and submit a review on iTunes. We also want your feedback, good or bad, or just if there's a topic you want us to cover. You can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
It doesn't work nearly as well when I have to read my own dad jokes on the air, but we have some literary content for this episode.
That was low.
I know.
That was really low.
We're going to start off with some corona-related news, it turns out, because I actually effed with Eric's show notes, and now I have to read them, which is even worse. Next, we will let you know what we did for preparedness since our last episode. Then we'll get into the main topic, our books on hand, what Eric hasn't read, or what we'd like to have. News time, I guess. So, for myself, C10. You guys have heard about the social media bill that's going through Parliament?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they've been swearing up and down, like typical politicians will, that don't worry, it won't apply to the average person. Average person's privacy will, be maintained. They won't get censored, everything else. And they're like, unless they have a lot of followers, in which case, we're still going to censor them and everything else. And decide to treat them as a publisher, and they'll have all the commercial laws that they're trying to write applied to them as well. So basically, it won't apply to the average Joe until it actually does. So thank you, CTV News, for pointing out that politicians talk out of both sides of their mouth.
Yeah, so what I also heard on that is the government says they won't censor you, but if the company, so Facebook, YouTube, whoever, doesn't censor you, then the government could censor them because they didn't censor you. So it's just a roundabout way of saying we're not going to do it, but we're going to do it.
It wasn't us. It was those platform guys that censored you. You still have your charter rights.
Exactly. That's what they're trying to say. Yep.
Just remember that everything before the but is bullshit.
Exactly.
We won't censor you, but
yeah. The other news article I had was some global news, and it was just regarding Manitoba just joining the in crowd, it seems, by introducing a bunch of really harsh, over-the-top measures that didn't help last time, but will definitely help this time, regarding public shutdowns of various services and new public health orders, basically. So, really, Manitoba, critical thinking. Anyway.
I swear, baby, this time it'll be different. You don't have to leave.
Yeah. So, anyways, it was just frustrating to watch that all these provinces just go, well, they're doing it, so we should probably do it too, so we don't get crap later on or something. I don't even think they're doing any sort of planning or thinking or financial repercussion studies or anything. But anyway,
unless you're in Calgary, and then they'll arrest you in the middle of the street and drag you away. So
that was quite the scene in Calgary there with the minister, wasn't it?
It was.
Anyway,
out of everything else that's going on, that's what we're worried about.
Yeah.
I have something to worry about. So a known group of cyber criminals has successfully launched a ransomware attack against an American company which operates major pipelines for refined fuel products and provides nearly half the gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel for the East Coast. It's like 45%.
Oh.
The attack happened on Friday. It's still an issue today, so we'll see what the price of gas is going to do because of it. Supposedly, this group only targets wealthy corporate deep-pocketed groups. They don't hit schools or hospitals because there isn't the money in it to pay the ransom. But it just absolutely highlights the vulnerabilities in our aging infrastructure system. All the articles you read about it sort of starts going down that track. So the scary extension being, while this is the oil pipeline, there have been computers that got the ransomware. It just shows how vulnerable the system is. And with the power grid, all these large companies might have cybersecurity people, but all the little companies, the little local electric companies might not, but they're all linked. So they become a vulnerability to the whole system. This group is motivated by money, but if someone has more malicious intent, who knows what could happen, and it's a little concerning.
Yeah, actually, this is the first I've heard about it, to tell you the truth, once I saw the show notes. But is this the same Line 5 that's going to be shutting down, or is this a different pipeline?
This is different.
Oh.
This is a U.S. company. They manage, I think it's 5,500 miles of major pipeline. Like, they're one of the biggest players in the game. They're based in Georgia. But they supply just literally, it's 45% of the fuel, like right down to the gas station level. There's apparently, refuel every few days. But, if this drags on more than a day or two, there has the potential to be big impacts.
Yeah, it's hard to come off as a Robin Hood when you pick on small companies. So I can see why they're going after the big companies and not the hospitals, right? But because, there's still the odd person who's going to be like, yeah, stick it to the man. But, yeah, that's bad news, especially if they can sit there and, do it repeatedly.
Well, and I mean, thankfully these guys are motivated by money, so they're not interested in, damaging the system that earns the money that they're trying to steal or ransom.
Yeah.
Whereas if there's someone who has more malicious intent and wants to damage infrastructure, it's just this computer or that computer if they're getting into the system. So,
wasn't this a Die Hard movie?
That was Airplanes in the Air, wasn't it?
No, that was Die Hard 2. Die Hard, I think Die Hard 5.
Oh, jeez.
Live Free or Die Hard. I'm pretty sure. Justin Long was in that one.
Oh, yeah. Timothy Oliphant or somebody like that was a hacker and was erasing people's savings. Yeah, okay, I remember that one. Yeah, okay. So they start to blur after a while.
Yeah.
That or sustainability.
I only watched them at Christmas time. Yeah. Pretty sure that's what this was. Yeah. We're gonna pull a move from Superman 3, so nobody will expect it.
So what Ian mentioned there, it's my thing in the show notes is about the Line 5, which basically people that don't know, you should. It's basically a line that runs from out west, peaks a bit through the United States, specifically through parts of Michigan, and then into Ontario to the refineries in Sarnia, and it supplies a substantial amount of, again, same as that other pipeline for refined fuel products, gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and that for Ontario, Quebec, and some of the further east. The deadline is looming this week. It's May 12th. Enbridge has basically said, we're not going to shut down unless we get an order from the courts. The Michigan government did try to take it to court, and the court sent it back, asking for another attempt at a mediation. So we'll have to see where that goes, what happens. I don't think we'll see anything in the near future. I mean, it would be really bad if they shut it down on May 12th and this other pipeline isn't back up yet. But with all the potential court appeals and whatever, I can't see something happening in the near future, but I've been wrong before.
Well, thank goodness for long-winded lawyers, right? For once they have a use, that's good.
Because of the pipeline shut or the cyber attack that I was talking about, apparently they've changed the rules in the States around trucking hours to allow realizing they're going to need to have more trucks delivering fuel. So I think we're going to see a lot more rail car, a lot more trucks on the road, if there's enough capacity to make up for it. Because you're right, Jeff, the shutdown is potentially really bad news.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right about the trucking and the rail and all that, but I mean, that takes a lot longer time, and you deliver considerably less product than you can to run it through a pipeline. So it will definitely have a massive impact for sure if it gets shut down.
Could turn into like the Berlin airlift of the semi-truck world or something. Try and keep the thing supplied with a small amount of lift capability anyways. But okay, well, I guess time to move on to what we've done lately for preps. Eric decided to bail on us here tonight, so off to me. Worked on the solar battery charging system. I think I sent you guys some pictures there, just working on that little kind of power distribution box for like iPhones and drone batteries and stuff like that. Can't seem to get the little voltage regulators to power down the voltage to the proper amount for the drone batteries and stuff, and actual USB cords. So working on that. Maybe I just got bad transformers or something. But anyway. Let's see here. Bought a drone pilot logbook to avoid the fines while I'm working on the recce flights around the acreage, because I guess with all these new regulations coming in, they're getting stiffer fines and everything else. I just want to have all my little paperwork in order, so when the designated government drone shows up, I can just go, here, paper. And figure, I think it was $13 or something like that, so it's just going to save me a hassle down the road. So anyways, I put a link down below. We'll talk about that later. Did some power line maintenance, just had some branches sticking out where they shouldn't stick out, and try to keep the fires down for the inevitable fire season. It's dry time. So just trying to do that before the chainsaw ban came into this year. We had shearing day this week. Yay. So the alpacas got their head shaved as usual. And like I said in the show notes, almost no injuries. So
did you get spit on?
How many stitches?
Actually, believe it or not, no stitches. And the best part was like I had those old style sheep shears where you have to kind of like manually put the blades together, and then you start shearing and stuff. And I managed to get my finger just on the back end, and it was just like, just a tiny little cut. So no big deal. And then, speaking of getting spit on, so I had my oldest daughter, who's, of course, home from university now because it's all done. And I said, well, congratulations, you're being pressed into service. And so I had her on, head maintaining duty while they were flipping the alpaca around. And she was good right up until the last alpaca. Then all of a sudden, it decided it had enough. So it sounded like Chewbacca for about 3 minutes, and all of a sudden started spitting wildly. And one of my buddies and my daughter kind of got the full brunt of a full-on bile spit. Like there's 3 levels of spit. Like there's air spit, where they're just kind of giving you a warning. Food spit, where they just whatever food's in their mouth, and then when they hawk up the loogie, they get the bile spit going. And that's the stuff that smells like ass. So, so she got literally just like a full shotgun blast, right? And she's like, "Dad, that's why I wore a raincoat." I'm like, well, true, but please don't let that raincoat back in the house. Anyway, so I came away pretty much scot-free, which was the important part, I guess, right?
It's funny because it's not me.
Yeah, that's right. It happened to you. See here. That's nothing in the show notes there. As far as that, as you can tell by my glorious background here, I'm back to the grind. So, just hanging around waiting to work. So no further prep work really to be done, except for maybe programming a radio or 2 here and there. And that's about it. Al?
I did some more work on my radios. I actually found a way to run the cable that I couldn't get from my antenna. So my antenna is now set up on my truck. Got some new radios from Rapid Survival, getting those programmed. Ian and I were supposed to connect before the show, but other things happened instead. So we'll find some time to do that while you've got nothing better to do where you are. Lots of training, lots of time at work. It's been a busy few weeks at work, and then getting out in the garden, getting that ready to plant. I think we started some of our plants a little too early this year, but we'll find the balance eventually. We get 72 tomato plants, and we got 50 pounds of tomatoes in the ground, or potatoes in the ground, I should say, and a whole ton of herbs. We're planting basically a salsa garden is what we're doing. And that's been my week. Finally scheduled the demolition of the old garage and get the foundation scheduled for the replacement. So that's crazy exciting. It's going to be I should be in it before the 1st of October. It should be all done and dusted with my in-floor heating and all that good stuff. So that's my next project. Actually, I got to link up with Gavin and find a wood stove for it. So,
actually, just a quick question: has the commodity price changes, like with lumber and everything else, has that affected? Did they change their quote on you or anything else? Or are they kind of like locked into a price, or how does that work?
Well, I've been updating my prices as I go because I figured that was going to happen. So the concrete's actually not so bad. It's a little bit more than what I was originally planning, but it also allows for it also includes an allowance for the in-floor heating that I wasn't originally going to do. My original design was for a 2-story garage, which has now come down to like one and a half stories. And so I'm kind of offsetting the increased lumber price with the reduced volume of lumber that I need. It's still going to suck, but it's not. It's going to be at least a year before the prices go back down, and I just can't wait that long.
That's fair.
What's your in-floor heating going to be?
It's going to be a glycol system, and I have the guy coming tomorrow to do an actual to walk me through the system. But the plan is that because I have to take up the first cut of the concrete in my driveway, I'm going to run a loop out there as well, so that the first section doesn't get frosted over, and like my garage door won't freeze shut. With the eye that if it ever needs to be done, I can extend that loop out further into the driveway and have less driveway to shovel in the winter.
That does sound exciting.
Yeah. A friend of mine talked to me about that. He's a plumber, and he said, if you're going to do in-floor heating, make sure you make an allowance for this, so that if you ever have the opportunity to replace your driveway, you have the infrastructure in place to be able to add that loop, and you will never have to shovel your driveway again, and all of your neighbors will be envious.
Yeah,
and I have absolutely no problem with that at all.
What's the heat source for the ethylene glycol? Is it like a natural gas or propane or electric?
This one, it's going to be an electric water heater in this case.
Okay.
Because there's no gas going to the garage. So,
okay. Cool.
Yeah. Basically, it's a big water heater with a loop and a pump.
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
Nope. So in terms of my prep stuff, I also got some new radio gear from Rapid Survival. My comms plan admittedly was lacking a handheld option, so I got a portable and some of the matching accessories. So I'm quite excited to start playing with that.
I just came up with Eric's new intro line. It's going to be great. I'm Eric. I sell radios and radio accessories.
It's like the Hank Hill of the prepper world.
Works for me.
And it was a fairly quiet week for me. I just did a little bit of property maintenance, cleaning out the eave trough, getting rid of all of the dead branches and stuff that fell off the trees in the winter, and a little bit of general maintenance around, and did a bit more firewood, not a lot. This wasn't one of those more motivating weeks for me, but it is what it is. And just in the live chat there, Brad Taylor said, time to fuel up. Absolutely. If you haven't, you need to get there. We're not sure exactly what or when things may happen, but the last thing you want to do is get caught. That's why we're preppers.
Or just at least rotate the gas you have and, give it a try, something like that.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess it's time to move on to the main topic of the show. So, Alan, take it away.
What's in our library? It's a, this could go on for days if we really wanted it to.
I know.
So my first intro into survival and outdoorsy type things was the Sas Survival Manual. That little palm-sized book. It was about 450 some odd pages. I actually still have it. It's I think it's in my oldest child's room right now. Got it probably 20 years ago. That was the kind of the intro, and that kicked everything off for me. I'm a big fan of Les Stroud's books. He's got a few of them out. Like the first one is just the Survive. It's just his survival book, which is a lot of fun. He has another one called The Will to Live, which I also really enjoy, that talks more about the psychology behind people who survive difficult situations than the actual survival mechanisms, the actual skills they used, which again I really enjoyed. And on top of being a great resource, he's an excellent storyteller, which makes it more palatable to read an otherwise potentially dry topic. Big shout out to Dr. Alton and Nurse Amy. We've had them on the show a couple of times. We'll hopefully have them back again. Their entire series, as well as their blog and their website, Doom and Bloom, absolutely fantastic. Their Survival Medicine Handbook was one of the first advanced first aid books that I ever got, and it was kind of my intro into that world, which was fantastic. Home renovation books and magazines, and the Home Handyman series. It's a uniquely Canadian thing. I don't even know if it's out on the West Coast, but I see them here on magazine racks in in Shoppers Drug Mart or wherever pretty regularly. They're usually about 200 pages, and they've just got a whole bunch of how-tos of really random things, which is great. Home Depot used to have a little book section, which I enjoyed. It's largely gone these days, but they were a good resource. I see Scott's got the Home Depot 1, 2, 3 books.
Those exact bookshelf in the Home Depot store you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I've got the same books. I got them. They were gifted to me when I bought my first house more years ago.
I've got a couple of them too. So
yeah, and they're fantastic resources. Like some of it's kind of basic, and it's not going to turn you into a home builder in any way. Actually, Find Home Building put out a series of books for a while. I got one on carpentry and one on drywall, and they read like textbooks, written by people who've been doing the job for 20, 30 plus years. And here's your best practices along with your practical skills. So I really enjoyed those. I have a ton of first aid books. I actually had, because I'm this level of safety nerd, I actually had a collection for a few years of old first aid manuals, dating back to the late 19th century. I had probably 30 or 40 of them from different years, from different organizations. I donated them all to a museum at one point when I was moving, but I have a ton of, like, literally thousands of specific general skill, survival, first aid, outdoors, camping, field manuals from various militaries around the world on PDF. So I spend a fair bit of time cruising pdfdrive.com. Not an ad. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I just really enjoy their services. It's a searchable database of 80 million some odd books that have been scanned into PDF, and it's not quite as user friendly as, say, a Kindle app where you can bookmark pages and highlight things. But in terms of having access to the information, I have literally thousands, and it's all free access to those books. So, and I have them stored online, backed up on thumb drives, etc. And it's a great resource. Oh yeah. Darius Gator put out Northern Bushcraft by Morse Kachansky. Everything by Morse Kachansky was fantastic. I think that, again, it was one of the first books that I got. I think I definitely still have that one. Except for a couple of back pages that I used one time to light a fire in the rain. A couple of the index pages are missing. Morse Kachansky is great. He passed away recently, unfortunately, but he was a phenomenal resource of just everything to do with living in the wild. He would not have appreciated that I used his book instead of making my own feather sticks.
Yeah, or using some old man's beard or something. Yeah, that pdfdrive.com, that's actually, I've used that quite a bit too. I mean, it's all downloadable, it's all free, which is, it's beautiful, and it's amazing what is on there for sure. That's and
you can get an entire university education with the textbooks and things that are on there. There's no limit to the amount of information that's available just from that one website.
Well,
I think they have like 80 million books currently, and it just keeps climbing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that Les Stroud's books too, because like that, again, we've talked about it before, but the psychology of survival, that's often overlooked, and it's actually a pretty important topic, and yet there's very little covered with it. Like, it's not a popular topic, right? It's not as tactical or anything.
Well, I mean, we long use the rule of threes, right? You can go 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, not 3 months. But you'll go 3 seconds without hope.
Yeah.
If you don't have the will to live, the rest of that doesn't matter.
So true.
Yep.
So I love collecting knowledge. It's kind of why I'm here. The tagline of the podcast really drew me in. Back in the good old days when you can just wander.
in.
I fell for it. Back in the good old days when you can wander around the bargain section of chapters and just find some interesting, potentially random book. Like, I love having that kind of stuff on my bookshelf that, batteries are never going to run out. There's never going to be a compatibility problem. There's a book. So I totally agree with you, Alan. Like those practical Home Depot 1, 2, 3 style. If I need to repair my house, I can at least know what's supposed to be there, or get a sense of what someone else would need to be doing to repair it. So framing, structure, electrical, plumbing code, all of those things. I think that's a tremendous resource. Along that same
plumbing code is easy. Don't need a specific book for that. Shit rolls downhill. Don't lick your fingers. Payday's on Friday. That's all you need to know about plumbing.
I knew all three of those rules. So along that same train of thought, there's the Haynes manuals that you can get for pretty much any vehicle out there. They do a complete tear down, take pictures of all the different components as they're doing it. It tends to be broken down into the specific vehicle and a range of model years that it applies to, kind of between the manufacturers retweaking things. They're great. It's sort of a simplified mechanics manual. I like it, so I can figure out, okay, I can change this bulb easy. I'm not ready to rebuild the transmission. But, at the same time, if things go terribly wrong in the world and I have to figure out how to repair something, it's just nice to have that resource available. It's just, simple stuff, like how many pound feet of torque needs to be on the lug nuts when I put my winter tires on. Anyway, so that's always handy. Lots of, the Prepper's Guide to ... books, just because they're kind of the fluff that's fun to read. The same kind of bushcraft books. I also really like paper maps. They're, sort of being able to look at a whole map if the internet is down and sort of know, yep, there's a road here. Perfect. I see value in that.
Paper maps and topo maps, those are great things to have on hand.
Absolutely. To be able to intelligently read a topo map and sort of discern a lot more information, like it's just such a useful thing. Some books on food storage. Our episode a week or two ago talking about host favorites got me listening to the canning one, and I'm looking forward to trying strawberry jam when they're in season in a month or two.
Nice.
Some medicinal plants of Canada. I thought that was an interesting one. I don't have Dr. Alton's books yet, but they will certainly be added to that section. And like Alan, I also have a whole lot of regular medical books and some first aid books from the turn of the century, just because it's really interesting. I have a section of books that I haven't really gotten into yet, but I like having around. I'm not ready to build a log home or to be a backyard blacksmith. But having the knowledge for those things, or the weather interpretation, or there's a great book on maker skills. It's by a guy who's on a few of the Discovery Channel shows that MacGyver's junk together for these fantastic projects. They collect obtainium is what they sort of describe when they're scrounging parts. So anyway, it's that sort of kind of knowledge that would be really helpful if if all of a sudden I'm responsible for doing a whole lot more things than I was used to be. I have some fiction and nonfiction, kind of like biography sort of stuff. A lot of, the Les Stroud books. Neil Strauss has a great book called Emergency. And it's sort of talking about his journey, thinking about these things that we talk about. And he's a very entertaining author. In terms of the fiction, it kind of scares you to go through these ugly scenarios and project them onto, our situations, and sort of think about, oh gosh, I am not prepared for ... Anyway, I kind of think it's the whole point of our book club to talk about some of these interesting ideas that someone has taken the time to play out the EMP idea and see what the consequences are going to be on these fictional characters. And by extension, we can figure out what the consequences would be on us.
Just to interject real quick, when we were talking about maps, I just did a quick search to see what I could find for buying topographical maps for my area. Turns out the government of Ontario actually has a really cool tool on their website that will allow you to make your own topo map as big or as wide or as narrow a view as you'd like, down to the street names in anywhere in the province, as well as all the features around it, all the bodies of water, the county lines, the road lines, the municipal lines,
property lines,
and property lines, and you can print them yourself. So you can either print, if you have a quality printer on your own, you can do that, or you can send it to Staples.
I actually have used that website. I did a great big topo map, spat out the PDF, sent it to Staples to have it printed. I think it was on 11 by 17. Like, it was sort of great big, and it's a fantastic website. You can also control these, do satellite photography or topo, or kind of fade in between, so you can sort of move the slider and get a really good look at it. So
that's So I just found that, and this is amazing. So I think I'm going to print a few that. So we've always talked about having backups on backups. So we'll print a couple of maps that have for the vehicles that have our designated meeting points and our alternate routes to things.
If you put that in the show notes for sure, that'd be great.
Every time I go to look it up, I just do make a topo Ontario, and the link comes up quite quickly. So it's a fantastic website.
Our tax dollars actually doing something useful. That's good. Darius points out that I guess the Haynes manuals were originally designed for military techs who didn't have time to learn the entire vehicle, which makes sense because, I mean, they give enough details and enough specs to be able to pull it off without foreknowledge, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, I think they're a fantastic resource. I have a great little book from Lee Valley that has an endless amount of useful figures, sizes, constants, formulas, everything in it. It's great because you're looking up, like, what size pilot hole
that little mechanics or handyman's helper, that little reference book.
Yeah, it's just like a little pocket-sized book.
Yeah,
it's probably
the pocket reference or whatever.
And it's got sections on absolutely every industry, every subject matter. So how much does a cubic yard of gravel weigh? And or what's the sizing for this bolt? Or, anyway, just one of those things that is absolutely invaluable on a not infrequent basis.
Yeah, no, I've had copies of that before.
So I had one. My dog chewed it, so it gave me a reason to buy an updated one. One of my favorites, though, is this little one-page sheet jokingly titled "Hang This Up in Your Time Machine." And it's all about these useful technology and how we would recreate them if we went back in time. So I put a screen grab of it in the show notes, just because it's really interesting when you look at it and think, if you had to recreate, flight technology, nuclear technology, antibiotics, radio systems. So
that's pretty cool. What was that movie? Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. There were a couple of versions of it, and he goes back. He has to go back in time. He ends up back in time and has to recreate a whole bunch of things. And he gets called a wizard because he knows things like how to mix brass and copper together to make brass and zinc together to make copper. Copper and zinc to make brass. Sorry. I don't even know it, but right? he's got those basic skills that make him look like an absolute genius when it's stuff that we just know.
Wasn't that a Mark Twain novel originally?
Yes, it was. Yep, and I think Dean Martin was in the original version, and they did a remake in the early '90s. Disney did it called King Arthur's Court.
Yeah, Greatest American Oddball or something like that, or it was some weird thing like that. Yeah,
something like that.
I'll just get a copy of that later on. That looks pretty cool.
It's a funny read, and so I hang it prominently in my TARDIS. So.
It's important.
And Scott, you're a nerd.
Oh, totally. Right. I'm a nerd in all areas, not just safety.
Excellent.
So, admittedly, this is my this is my weakest area. I don't have a lot of books or plans or whatever. I've got a few of those DIY books like that you guys covered, the 1, 2, 3 of electrical and plumbing and that kind of stuff. But pretty well everything I got, I either self-taught and learned trial and error, or I got it from my father, who was very mechanically inclined, shall we say. So I've picked up a ton of hints so far off of this for books and ideas and things that I probably should be adding to my extremely limited collection. So I've actually gotten a lot out of this already. So
cool. Yeah. As for myself, avid reader from an early age, so I've been like devouring books like crazy. So if I were to list them off, it would be very boring. So a couple ones to stick out.
When has that stopped you?
Well, that's true. Actually, I should just go spurg out on this. But anyways, yeah. Okay. So a couple things that stuck out during the course of my life that made a big impact, or I guess really stirred up interest. It's gonna sound corny, but the first one was the Boy Scout Manual, and because it's actually not a bad book. It's got.
I have one from the late 50s. Sitting on my bookshelf, and yeah, it's a great resource.
And surprisingly, I was, I didn't realize how well-rounded of a book that was, because it wasn't just outdoor survival. It was tying knots. It was like, basic animal husbandry. It was everything, because you're trying to learn all these, or earn all these badges. So they're trying to give you like a kind of a rough rundown of everything, which kind of stirs your interest to explore more topics, or at least more in depth into topics. So I held my Boy Scout Manual, I think, until I moved to Ontario. So it was most of my life. And then finally I just gave it away to Goodwill because I figured somebody else could use it. But by then it was probably so out of date, it was painful. But anyway, so I definitely enjoyed that. I think I still got a digital copy somewhere as well. One that also came out in 1958, but it was still relevant back in the 80s when I was using it, was one called A New Way of the Wilderness. And it was basically a canoeist's guide to Canada. And but of course, as a canoeist, you're going to have lots of reasons to want to know how to figure out what wild edibles are, basic first aid in the wilderness, kind of an expanded wilderness first aid, shelter building, all this other stuff that canoeists couldn't really pack with them, but would need to know. So if you're doing a canoe trip all the way, through like, I don't know, Algonquin Park, maybe that's even a small trip, but like if you're doing like a major river trip as a canoeist, it's just like a expanded survival guide. And it was fantastic. So I definitely recommend that one. I still definitely have a copy of that one. Later on in college, I think another one stuck out at me because it was, I guess, job relevant, but also the fact it was well put together by multiple generations of military people, was called Down But Not Out. And it was basically just like a post-crash survival guide. But it didn't matter how you got to the survival situation. It just basically dealt with the survival situation. So that was really neat. And I still have that exact same copy sitting in my bookshelf. And then the next one is probably primitive compared to Alan's collection, but I did actually have my grandpa's original St. John's First Aid novel from like early 1900s, covered in denim, I think it was. It had gray with the big iron cross in the front and everything else.
Some reminder canvas. It's not an iron cross. It's the cross of Amalfi, which is often confused for Maltese cross.
Oh, there you go.
And I could nerd out on that for a whole year, but yeah, I think mine. I have a couple that are denim and a couple that are canvas, and then I even have one that's leather, and then they get into the cheaper materials. So
okay, what's the difference between a Maltese cross and a multi-cross?
The Maltese, so the Maltese cross, right? The cross of Malta is the 4 arms and the 8 points that you see in the St. John Ambulance logo.
Okay.
That's the cross of Amalfi. I'm sorry, that's the cross of Amalfi. The Maltese cross is the one you see on fire trucks. And it's the same 4 arms and 8 points, but instead of coming in the middle, they bow out in the middle.
Well, there you go. I just learned something.
That's the cross of Malta. And the two of them are really, really closely intertwined. And if you ask the Maltese people about it, then they claim the Maltese cross. Their flag is a red Maltese cross with the 8 points instead of angles in instead of pointing out. And the cross of Amalfi, it's all incestuous in that part of the world, but there's a lot of history, a lot of wars, a lot of battles, and both countries claim both crosses and both organizations, right? Fire Service and St. John Ambulance worldwide claim them both as the Maltese cross when one is really not.
Well, Amalfi's is part of it, the Italian coast anyways, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so, and then my second first aid book that really sticks out to me, I still have a copy of, is my industrial first aid book from, basically I had a job in college that allowed me, well, it was the equivalent of Zayres in Ontario, same company, just called Overweighty Foods at the time, and they needed an industrial first aid attendant. I stuck up my hand, or maybe everybody else took 2 steps back, and I got awarded it, so I still have that big manual where they sent me for the, 2-week course or whatever it was, and yeah, it's pretty good, so it's been a good reference the whole time through.
Yep. Probably is likely the equivalent in Ontario to the first responder level.
Yeah, it's definitely a handy one anyway. So then later on, of course, just like Alan mentioned, the Sas Survival Manual, I ended up picking up the giant version, not the pocket version. And because they sold them in Costco, and at the time I was like, oh, well, it's pretty mainstream. I'm not a crazy prepper for buying something you can buy in Costco. And then they came out with the Urban Survival Manual, which was actually a tad more tactical, but still useful. Recommend them both for sure, especially if you get them secondhand. They're thick and heavy. So then my autism took over with Napster. So early 2000s, Napster was a thing, and at the time, I think it was Crown versus I can't remember who they were going against. But anyways, it came out that basically for a little while in Canada, having a BitTorrent account was the same as having a photocopier in a library. It was not considered illegal as long as you didn't try and resell them. And so these guys were putting out these massive book dumps on the order of gigabytes worth of books that were probably, 50, 60 kilobytes per book. So you can imagine how many books are in these things. So I ended up downloading some of these books, book files that had 2,000 books in them easy, and then you'd have to sit there and you'd actually spend more time sorting through than actually reading the books. And, starting the wheat from the chaff. And in those things were, a bunch of open source material, like the Army FM manuals, like the field manuals and the United States Marine Corps manuals. Then there was all these Ragnar Benson shelter books and all these other ones. And it was amazing, the just volume of knowledge that was there. But of course, it's all in digital format. So great until something goes horribly wrong. But at the time, because I didn't know any better, I actually went all digital for a while. I actually gone down to maybe 20 books on the shelf. And then of course, after the power outage of 2003, and then I learned about EMP thanks to certain books that we're talking about here. I was like, oh, I suppose you should probably print off a few of these. So look, there are all these Army field manuals that if you as soon as the boom goes off in the sky and the EMP goes off and you can't access any of them, well, great. I hope your memory's good. But yeah, so obviously over time here, I've kind of transitioned back, or at least tried to, as best I can with the important ones, gone back to the paper versions. So again, we mentioned the Survival Medicine Handbook. I happened to get a free copy from Jill Alton and Amy Alton, which spurred me on to get other ones of theirs, because they're fantastic books. The staples, Where There Is No Doctor and Where There Is No Dentist, we got a deal on Amazon for those ones. Again, because it's one of those things that talks about, well, what happens if you only have a skate and a rock to knock out that tooth with, Castaway style. And so there's lots of knowledge and actual proper procedures on how to avoid infections and stuff with these books, and field expedient antibiotics, or at least antiseptics and everything else. And it's definitely well worth the read, or at least having on hand. Try and breeze through it before you actually need it, though, because
absolutely the time to learn a skull is not when you need to use it.
Flipping through the book with bloody hands while you're bleeding arterially is not a good time to figure out. It's just like, anyways, yeah. And then so my wife has actually got an entire shelf full of various wild edible books and everything else. And again, it depends on what area of the country you're in as to what books will work best for you, because the hardwood forests of Southern Ontario, or what's left of them, provide different wild edibles than the west coast of BC or whatever, right? So trying to find a locally sourced, I guess, or a local specific wild edible book. We have tons of those. Emergency Food Storage and Survival Handbook is actually a title, and it's a good one. And then a couple of books by Cody Lundin that I still have on my shelf. One's called When Technology Fails, which is modern day backups to everyday useful stuff without any sort of electronics. And then the other one's called When All Hell Breaks Loose, and his last one was Keeping Your Ass Above 98 Degrees, which is obviously about hypothermia. and pretty cool guy. He kind of wanders around barefoot through northern Nevada, where it's actually not hot. It's actually like high altitude kind of alpine desert, gets below zero. And most of these books are all available to be found on pdfdrive.com, like Alan mentioned, and you can download them and or just view them online. You actually reminded me, Scott, just as you were talking there, one thing I do have paper copies of still, no matter what, and I never throw them out, is the owner's manuals for generators, equipment like the quads, the snowblower, the log splitter, whatever you happen to have. Because again, knowing what spark plug, what fuel, or what oil's best, what torque spec, everything, it's like you're not going to memorize all that, right? So,
well, I'm flattered that you mentioned it, because I actually jotted down notes for myself that I should mention all the manuals for all my gear, so that you know that stuff.
Yeah, because it's hard to keep track of everything too, right? And so especially if you have a digital copy of some of that stuff too, and you're at the Canadian Tire and you want to pick up a spark plug for the generator, whatever, you can just look up the digital owner's manual at least, and you can do that as well. But I like to have paper copies too. So,
well, and one of the tips I picked up from you guys, I have that manual in a Ziploc bag with the spark plugs for the generator written on it, that it's for this generator, so I can figure this out later. All neatly tucked in. So,
Darius mentions he's trying to find a good book for hardwoods in Alberta, so I can start hand carving gun stocks. The best book I would recommend there is finding somebody that makes knives and talks about Alberta hardwoods, which I don't know. I mean, most of them are pine, poplar, or birch. Maybe birch they would use.
Birch would be harder than poplar, yep.
Yeah, I would say birch would probably be your best bet in Alberta. But yeah, ask a local knife maker. He'll tell you exactly what to use and how to dry it and everything else. Like the hardwoods we have, the only one that's any good for that kind of stuff on the West Coast is the sugar leaf maple. The rest of them, like the arbutus one, cracks too much, and when it dries out, and the rest of them are too soft. So, yeah, that's a hard go on the west side of the country.
Or import oak or maple from Ontario.
Yeah, if there's any left, I don't know.
If there's any left, there's lots of oak and lots of maple around. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, but you cut down one of those in the middle of the street, you probably hear about it from the neighbors, right?
Don't make your issues my issues.
That's right.
A lot easier to find ash these days, unfortunately.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, those gun stocks aren't going to carve themselves. Let's get this one down here. Yeah. I actually tried to make some stuff out of the local arbutus here, and I didn't realize how bad it cracks. And yeah, it just gets, and it's not even straight cracks. The cracks go kind of curvy sideways throughout the whole wood, and it's useless for that. So, anyway.
I'll make one more note of if you're looking for one book for everything outdoors. I mean, don't just have one book, of course, but if you're going to start with one, the Outdoors Encyclopedia by a guy named Vince Barano is a fantastic resource. I've had a couple of editions. I think I loaned one out. My last one out and never got back. I forget who I loaned it to. You should never loan something if you want it back, I guess is the lesson there. But I loaned a copy out, never got it back, but I would replace that in a heartbeat. The Outdoor Encyclopedia, again, that's probably 17 or 1800 pages of personal experience from somebody who's spent his entire life outdoors. Very similar to Les Stroud in terms of content, but not necessarily in terms of the storytelling. He's not as good.
Well, let's bring it to the podcast challenge then.
Sure.
Our challenge this week: download books if you can, buy them if you prefer. Printing is always an option, but please gather as much relevant information as you can. While all of these we have all the unrestricted access to the world's complete compendium of knowledge. The internet's a wonderful place, so let's take advantage of that while we can.
Or at least it will be until C10 goes through.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Upcoming events, Alan?
Upcoming events. Radio Amateurs of Canada, or RAC, are putting on a free Canwarn course that's coming up. The link is in the show notes. It's one of the few things that's actually happening in this world. Join them. It's great, apparently.
Yeah, Eric did attend the course, I guess, or yeah, he did. And he said it was basically worth the time. It's only 2 hours long, and it just teaches you storm recognition, how to report it to the higher-ups if you've got a tornado running around your backyard, or anything else, it's I guess a good storm watcher course, and it's free, so that's good.
Funny enough, probably the day after we were talking about it the last time, I got a note from the search and rescue team saying that we were attending it. We could either attend it live, which happened to be on a Thursday afternoon and I couldn't, or it's been recorded, so we'll be doing it in training in the next couple of weeks. So apparently it's a thing that's making its rounds right now.
Cool.
I took the Canwarn course probably, I'm going to say at least 10 years ago, of course, pre-COVID. So there was a whole bunch of us in the class, but there were a bunch of first responders, all the local fire departments, some of the EMS, some of the ham guys at the time. So I've signed up. I'm going to take it just for a good refresher. And
actually, Darius brings up a good point. Mapleseed has announced its events across the country. So those of you who want to get your Mapleseed Rifleman patch, go on mapleseedrifleman.com, I believe is the website. And it lists the events local to you. And for the sake of I think it's $95 or whatever, it's a full day of instruction. It's a bunch of shooting, earn your patch, and you'll probably learn some good shooting techniques. I think everybody did that goes to the course. I certainly did. Yeah, it's definitely worth your time. And it's, again, socially distant, kind of. So they can still pull it off as long as the gun ranges are still okay with it. I mean, I think they might have to limit class sizes in certain provinces, but I mean, honestly, it's still a go where we are too. So I should have actually put that in there. Thanks, Darius. And then other than that, I guess that's pretty much it. Deal of the week time. The only thing I could find that was really stuck out at me was the Chiappa Little Badger, which is your bare bones basic single shot 22 survival kind of style gun. Has half 28 threading on one end for reasons, and lightweight, folds in half, and reliable. And it's $50 off, so it's $179, which I don't think you're going to find a cheaper one than that. That's at rangeviewsports.ca, and that's it till the end of the week. So you got another, sorry, not the end of this week, meaning today, the end of next week. So I think it's until Saturday. Other than that, I put the link in the show notes for the drone pilot logbook. I probably should have had it with me to talk about it, but anyways, there is a link in the show notes for that. And shout outs. Nothing for you, Alan?
I don't like people enough to shout them out.
Fair enough. Let's see here.
Actually, I'll change that. I'll shout out Ethan if he's listening. He's a local listener to me. He's off. I think he's leaving tomorrow on a great adventure, and I'm insanely jealous of where he's going, what he's doing. He'll be out in your kind of neighborhood-ish, Ian. Anyways, if you are listening, Ethan, I hate you a little bit, and we'll see you when you get back.
Right on. Anybody else?
I'm going to shout out Eric and Rapid Survival because I got some gear from him, and I was quite impressed.
He told me he sent me
free stuff.
Yeah, he told me he sent me some stuff. I don't believe him. It hasn't showed up yet. So
that's why he's not here.
Yeah, actually, I did order some stuff from Alan too, or I bought something off Alan, but Canada Post.
Canada Post. It's on its way.
It's slow. Anyways,
pathetically.
Yeah. Anything for you, Scott?
Nope. I think that's a good shout out for me.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I meant Jeff.
Nope.
Okay.
I'm good.
That's it. We have to redo the entire show now.
Yeah, that's it. Start over. Email and iTunes reviews.
We got one from the Canadian Preppers Network, and he says, my club has a phone patch on their repeater, which gives, and with the access codes given to members only. It's an interesting concept. I think we should I'm going to talk to my local club about that. See if there's a phone patch on the repeater, because that would be really handy if the phone if Rogers goes down, you can still make phone calls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how it goes. Does it go through a central phone server that the old style ones for landline?
Yeah, I think it connects to an actual a LAN-based PBX.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That would be interesting.
That would be handy.
I don't know if you can receive calls in that way, but you can make them at least.
You can make them, but you also have to remember that everybody who has access to that repeater is going to hear your.
Oh, absolutely!
It's not a single one-to-one.
It's not even as good as a party line. Yeah.
So no naughty phone calls, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, no 900 numbers.
Oh, that would be really awkward.
Oh, yeah.
Almost as awkward as a politician getting naked in front of a parliamentary Zoom call, huh? Oh, yeah. That happened. Anyway, Scott, you had one as well?
Apparently from Mailman NB, How do you get a cable through a firewall? Simple. You get your daughter's boyfriend who's a mechanic to do it. One simple step. So I guess that's all you needed to do, Alan.
I found a different way, so I didn't have to go through the firewall and I didn't have to extend the cable. I'll shout out Dodge, I guess, because there's a little storage well under the floorboard of the back seat. And when I was looking under the truck to figure out how to run this cable, I realized that well is just, it's just a little piece of formed plastic. So I just popped a hole through there and then used some construction adhesive to create a waterproof seal around it afterwards.
Beauty.
And it turned out to be a really simple way to just run the cable in and off we go.
Nice.
Yeah. That was it. So if that's all the emails and iTunes reviews we have, let's bring episode 116 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Submit a review. Helps other people find us. If you want to reach me, you can find me, Alan, at prepperpodcast.ca, and that's Alan with one L.
And we record these shows live on Facebook and YouTube. If you want an early peek at the shows, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast, and click the notifications tab. It gives you an alert when we're going live. If you want to contact me, you can send it generically through feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
I also agree with the gray man approach, and feedback at prepperpodcast.ca works just fine. Hypothetically, these guys can find me.
Yeah, well, you're still on a list, man. I mean,
he works for the government. He is the list.
That's right. He has access to them anyway. So, all right. If you want to reach Ian directly, you can email me at theislandretreat@gmail.com, because screw the Gray Man Theory, and on Gab at The Island Retreat. You can also find me on Canadian Patriot Podcast on iTunes and YouTube. Let's see here. And in the Discord group, Canadian Patriot Podcast. Email us if you want an invite. It's a fun little group, pretty salty content for sure. There you can find us discussing why government waste in society makes me hoard paperbacks. Anyway, best to come up with without Eric here. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.